There is a code, a biological instruction left by Thoth, the Egyptian master of wisdom, to reconnect your consciousness to the original source. And in the next 30 seconds, I will give you the first key to this process. It's not a metaphor, it's a physical instruction that you can apply tonight. But the truth is that most people aren't ready for what happens next. The activation of the monad, your immortal core, doesn't give you what you want. It dissolves the you that you want. It erases the false identity, and to the mind, this feels like death itself. That's why many will feel an urge to leave now. But if you stay, it's because your soul knows that the pain of remaining a fragment is greater than the fear of becoming whole. This isn't a video you stumbled upon by chance. It's a pre-arranged encounter. A time window is opened, and what will be revealed here isn't a theory, but an activation map, a process that ancient mystery schools kept under lock and key, waiting for the initiate's readiness. That readiness is yours. Now. The urgency is real, because the noise of the world is making the silence necessary for this activation almost impossible. What I'm going to show you isn't just how to activate this core, but how to deal with the inevitable consequences, the complete reorganization of your life, your relationships, and your perception of reality. Stay until the end, because the final instruction is what guarantees the activation will be permanent. If you felt the calling, comment, "I am ready to go home." There are exactly 3 types of people who will continue watching, and the first one will leave in the next 30 seconds. What I'm about to reveal will sound uncomfortably close to a truth they've been avoiding facing. The second type will remain, but will keep one foot out the door, protecting themselves from something they can't name, but which they already feel vibrating beneath their skin. The third type will feel something shift in their chest right now, because they know that tonight is not a coincidence, nor the work of an algorithm, but a rendezvous with their own essence. If you are still here, it is because a temporal and cosmic window has just opened in the architecture of your consciousness. It doesn't offer a wellness technique or a philosophy to debate. It offers an activation, a process that ancient mystery schools took lifetimes to prepare in their initiates, awaiting the precise alignment between the soul's readiness and the cosmos's permission. This permission has been granted to you at this very moment, not by merit, but by evolutionary necessity. The universe doesn't operate on sentimentality. It operates on physics. When the pressure of your fragmented identity reaches a critical point and your search for external answers is completely exhausted, a fissure opens. It's an opportunity for a total recalibration of your system. An invitation to leap from a timeline of struggle and survival to one of resonance and presence. The window doesn't remain open indefinitely. It's a pulse, an anomaly in the flow of ordinary time. Many feel the calling, but hesitate. The conditioned mind, trained to distrust what it cannot measure or control, will try to convince you that this is just more information. It will say that you can come back to this later, that there is no urgency. But the truth is that the moment of grace is sovereign. It arrives without warning and departs in the same way. The decision to cross the threshold is yours, but the opportunity to do so is a rare gift, granted only when the soul is ready to abandon what it knows. Activating the monad isn't an event that happens to you. It's a recognition of what you already are. At your most fundamental level, it's the part of you that existed before your name, before your story, before your first wound. It's the silent observer who witnessed every joy and every pain without ever being scratched by them. Accessing this core isn't an act of learning, but of clearing. It's the conscious removal of the layers of interference that prevent you from hearing your own original frequency. The modern world, with its constant noise and artificial frequencies, saturates the nervous system to an unprecedented level. It makes inner silence, the vacuum necessary for this activation, almost impossible to achieve. That's why the urgency is real. Your ability to isolate yourself sensorially to create a sacred space within yourself is becoming an increasingly scarce resource. Tonight is not about learning a concept, it's about using a key in a door that may not be visible tomorrow. The hesitation you may feel now is the friction between your old self and your true self. It's the resistance of the identity that has become accustomed to living in disconnection, in performance, in the incessant search. It knows that, upon crossing that threshold, there's no way to fully believe in the illusion of separation again. Activation is a lifelong reference point. From it, you will forever know what it's like to be home. And it is precisely this disconnection that manifests as a constant symptom in your life. There's a feeling you know well, the one that arises in the middle of conversations where you say what people expect instead of what's true. You felt it after achievements that should have brought fulfillment but instead left an unmistakable emptiness. Or in relationships where they loved the version of you they presented, not the one they truly inhabited. This disconnect isn't a manufacturing defect. It's not evidence that you're broken or inadequate for this world. It's the clearest symptom of profound health. It is the exact space between what you have been convinced you are and the indestructible core of your consciousness. It is your soul refusing to settle into a reality smaller than the one for which it was designed. Ancient traditions called this phase the dyad, the realm of separation, of duality, where consciousness experiences itself through contrast. It is the training ground where the soul accumulates scar tissue, trying to find outside what can only be found inside. Pain is not the problem, it is the navigation system. Most people spend their entire lives trying to numb this symptom. They fill it with noise, with work, with relationships, with substances, with anything that drowns out the subtle voice that whispers, "That's not it." They decorate the prison cell instead of looking for the key. Their refusal to stop feeling this discomfort, their inability to completely distract themselves, is the first and most important sign that the inner observer, their monad, has begun the awakening process. It is calling their attention to the dissonance. This feeling isn't psychological, it's physical. It manifests as chronic tension in the shoulders, a tightness in the jaw, digestive instability. Your body is literally rejecting frequencies that don't correspond to your essential truth. It's giving you constant, real-time feedback about every environment, every person, and every choice. Ignoring these signals is like driving a car with the engine light on, expecting the problem to resolve itself. The body doesn't lie, and it's telling you that the current system is unsustainable. Society has trained you to interpret this mismatch as a personal failure. If you're not happy with what everyone says should make you happy, the fault must be yours. But that's the biggest inversion of the truth. Your dissatisfaction is your compass. It's proof that a part of you has remained intact, incorruptible, refusing to accept an imitation of life. The suffering you feel doesn't come from your essence, but from your personality's resistance to surrendering to it. The turning point happens when you stop fighting the symptom and start listening to it. When you understand that emptiness is not something to be filled, but a space to be explored. It is in this vacuum that the voice of your intuition becomes audible. It is there that social performance dissolves and authentic presence emerges. Disengagement is a portal. It invites you to stop seeking validation in the mirror of others and to finally turn to the original source of your own being. Therefore, the crisis you may be going through is not the end of the road. It is the beginning of the journey back. It is the call to initiation. The intensity you feel is the energy needed to break free from the cocoon of your limited identity. It is the universe conspiring not to give you what you want, but to reveal what you are. And this revelation requires a process of purification, a fire that burns only what is not real. What you are experiencing now, this intensity where old structures crumble and certainties become doubts, is not destruction. It is an alchemical process. Medieval alchemists were not primitive chemists trying to transform metal into literal gold. They were philosophers of consciousness, And they mapped the soul's journey with frightening precision. They called this exact moment Negredo, the blackening, the fire that burns away the lead to reveal the gold that has always been hidden beneath. The lead being burned is your constructed identity. It's the accumulated weight of every unprocessed wound, every limiting belief you absorbed, every performance you used to survive in a world that didn't understand your nature. It's the false self, the mask you mistook for your face. This fire is not a punishment, it's a grace. It's not here to hurt you, but to free you from a weight you didn't even know you were carrying. The fundamental error is believing that fire adds something to lead to transform it. It adds nothing. It only subtracts. It burns away everything inessential, everything that obscured the brilliance that was always there, intact. Gold is not created, it is revealed. Its essence, its monad, does not need to be built or improved. It only needs to be discovered beneath the layers of conditioning. Its willingness to sit with such intensity instead of fleeing proves that its deepest nature recognizes purification. Consider the metaphor of the oyster and the pearl. The discomfort, the crisis, the grain of sand that irritates is not the enemy. It is the catalyst. The pearl, the awakening, the expanded consciousness, is the living organism's response to this irritation. Without discomfort, there would be no transformation. Your ability to withstand the fire of Negredo, to allow it to do its work without interfering, is directly proportional to the beauty and brilliance of the pearl that will be formed. You are creating a new reality from your own center. This process is biological, not just philosophical. The alchemical fire corresponds to a recalibration of your nervous system. The old neural pathways, which sustained patterns of fear, scarcity, and reaction, are being deactivated. New pathways of presence, coherence, and intuition are being built. This can manifest as fatigue, confusion, or emotional hypersensitivity. Your body is undergoing an operating system upgrade, and this consumes an immense amount of energy. Many reach this stage and retreat. The intensity of the fire frightens them. They run back to old distractions, to familiar patterns, seeking the temporary relief of anesthesia. But you are here. You continue listening. This means that a part of you already knows there is nowhere to go back. The old world has lost its charm. The only way out is through. Trusting the process, even without understanding all its mechanisms, is the act of faith that fuels the flame. But I need to be very honest. This flame of awakening you feel right now is extremely volatile. The moment you close this video, the frequency of the world, traffic, bills, social media, will try to put out that glow and pull you back into the lead of routine. There is a very short window of time to anchor this awareness before forgetfulness takes over. For those who feel they cannot let this opportunity slip away, I prepared the MONAD code. It is not just a digital book, it is the anchor point so that this sovereignty you awakened here does not get lost in tomorrow's noise. Access is in the first pinned comment. It is for the few who understand that clarity is a gift that requires an immediate decision. Long before modern spiritual trends and pop psychology, philosophers who mapped consciousness with surgical precision pointed to something fundamental. Plotinus, the pinnacle of the Neoplatonic tradition, explained that the soul's journey is not a straight line toward a future goal. It is not a ladder to climb. It is a circular movement back to the origin. He called this origin the One, the source of all that exists, the indivisible reality, and its individual expression is the monad. Centuries later, the philosopher Leibniz described the monad as a simple substance without windows. That is the key. Without windows means that it does not receive its reality from the outside. It is not shaped by circumstances, by the opinions of others, or by the events of the world. It contains within itself the complete blueprint of the universe, reflecting it from its unique and irreplaceable perspective. You are not a piece in the puzzle. You are the entire puzzle, seen from a specific angle. This completely subverts the logic of the spiritual quest. You are not trying to reach the monad or connect to it. You are the monad. Your task is not to build a bridge to divinity, but to demolish the dams that prevent you from experiencing your own divine nature. Activation is not about acquiring something new, but about remembering who you are on a level that transcends the mind's memory. It is a recognition that happens at the cellular level, in the silence between your thoughts. The monad is the observer. It is the silent consciousness behind your eyes that is reading these words now. It is the part of you that was never born and will never die. It witnessed your childhood, your adolescence, your triumphs and your losses without ever being affected by them. It is the sky, and your thoughts, emotions, and experiences are the passing clouds. Identification with the clouds is the cause of all suffering. Identification with the sky is liberation. The Great Return, which the Neoplatonists called epistrophe, is not about going to a new place. It is about recognizing where you have always been. It is the collapse of the illusion of distance between you and the source. When the monad is activated, the search ceases, not because all questions have been answered, but because the need to ask dissolves. You begin to operate from direct knowledge, an intuition that is faster and more accurate than any rational analysis. This activation has immediate and practical consequences. Your sensitivity to resonance and dissonance becomes extremely heightened. Environments, people, and activities that are not aligned with your essential frequency become physically uncomfortable. This is not a judgment. It is information from the field. Your body becomes a finely tuned instrument that vibrates in response to truth and contracts in response to falsehood. Your life begins to reorganize itself around this new clarity, with or without your permission. The monad is not a white, ethereal light floating somewhere far away. It has a location, a throne within your own biology. In deep occultism, it is often associated with a portal of unimaginable power, a direct access point to the matrix of creation. And its symbolic representation is not what most people expect. It is not the light that blinds, but the darkness that gives birth to everything. In deep occultism, the monad is not described as a blinding white light, as sought in many traditions. This is the manifest light, the light of duality. The monad is often symbolized by the black sun, the sole Niger of the alchemists. It is the invisible light that shines in the primordial darkness, the source of all visible light. It is the fertile vacuum, the 0 point before the Big Bang, the silence from which all sound emerges. Most people make the mistake of seeking enlightenment by looking outward, to distant sources. They ignore the inner void, the sacred space that resides at the center of their own being. Thoth, the master of Egyptian wisdom, revealed in the Emerald Tablets that the path to unity is not an ascension out of the body, but a deep dive inward. He speaks of the halls of Amenti, not as a physical place, but as a vibrational space, an inner void where the soul sheds all illusions and confronts its immortal nature. This hall is located within you. The monad acts as a point of infinite mass at the center of your chest, an energetic black hole that doesn't destroy, but draws everything back to its origin. It's a direct portal where the original darkness reveals itself not as the absence of light, but as the womb of creation. Accessing this point is finding the unmoved mover of the universe within your own physiology. It's the point of stillness in the eye of the hurricane of your life, the place that remains untouched, no matter how chaotic the outside world becomes. The activation of this center does not happen through effort or prayer. Thoth was explicit about this. It occurs through sympathetic resonance, through the key of tones. This means you cannot force the door to open. You must become the frequency that makes the door vibrate and open on its own. It is a process of tuning, of aligning your biological instrument, your body, with the fundamental frequency of existence itself, the geometric pattern that the ancients called the flower of life. This attunement is not a metaphor. It is a process of biological alchemy. Esoteric traditions speak of a liquid fire, a substance that rises up the spine. Modern science knows it as cerebrospinal fluid. When this fluid is pure, free from the dense vibrations of fear, anger, and shame, it becomes the conductor of activation. It rises through the spinal cord to the center of the brain, the throne, where the master glands, the pineal and pituitary, await the signal. The biological switch that initiates this cascade of events is found in the most unexpected place: absolute silence, total stillness. The practice described in ancient texts requires total bodily inertia and the momentary suspension of breath, a pulmonary vacuum of a few seconds after a deep exhalation. It is in this instant of vacuum, of suspension between worlds, that the electrical signal is triggered, uniting the inner sun and moon, and the monad finally ignites in the heart. This is not a power you acquire. It is an inheritance you claim. It is your innate technology, your birthright as a conscious being. The black sun is not something to be feared, but understood. It is your personal access point to the infinite intelligence of the universe. It is your direct connection to the library that contains not only your history, but the history of all creation, a place where your unique signature is forever recorded. There is a record, not in a paper book, but in a dimension that underpins all physical reality. It is not a poetic metaphor, but the very architecture of consciousness. Mystics call it the Akashic Records. Cutting-edge science calls it the zero-point field. It is a timeless library where your failures or successes are not stored like a celestial judge. What is stored there is your unique vibrational signature, the irreducible pattern that makes you exactly who you are. This signature is your note in the cosmic symphony. It is perfect, complete, and eternal. The soul's journey through multiple lives through the world of form is a learning process, not to improve this note, for it is already perfect, but to learn to play it without distortion, without the interference of fear and conditioning. The soul arrives at the door of this library after a long pilgrimage through the world of matter, having experienced the entire spectrum of fragmented existence. At this threshold, there is no judgment, there is only recognition. The guardian of the library, which is a facet of your own higher consciousness, does not hand you a book with your story. He hands you a tuning fork. When you touch it, it vibrates at its original frequency, its pure note. And in that instant, cosmic amnesia ends. You remember. You are not a fragment seeking wholeness. You are wholeness learning to remember itself through the experience of fragmentation. The moment of this vibrational reading marks the end of the external search. The need to find answers, validation, or purpose outside of yourself dissolves because you realize that the pilgrim and the destination were always the same thing. The landscape you traveled was your own being projected outward. The people you met were mirrors of facets of yourself that you needed to integrate. The journey was never about arriving somewhere, but about awakening to where you already were. From this point on, life fundamentally changes. You stop trying to manifest things and begin to allow your authentic frequency to organize the reality around you. The things, people, and opportunities that resonate with your note begin to flow towards you effortlessly. Those that don't resonate peacefully move away. It's not magic, it's physics. It's the principle of resonance operating in its purest form. You become an organizing center for your own universe. This access is not a one-time event. It is a state of being. Once the connection with your fundamental frequency is reestablished, it becomes your new baseline. You may stray from it, you may get distracted, but you will always know the way back. Inner silence becomes your sanctuary, the place where you go to recalibrate, to hear your own note amidst the noise of the world. You learn to navigate life not by the map of your mind, but by the compass of your heart. However, accessing this library comes at a price everyone must pay. Entry requires you to leave all your baggage outside, and the heaviest baggage you carry is your own identity, the story you tell yourself about who you are. To enter the library of truth, your false self, the persona you've built to survive, must die at the door. Ancient initiation schools describe the awakening process as terrifying. Not out of cruelty or sadism, but out of honesty. Crossing the threshold, accessing one's monadic nature, demands the death of the false self. And this entity, its personality, its identity, based on fear, and built brick by brick with the expectations of others, does not distinguish its own dissolution from the physical death of the organism. For it, annihilation is real, and it will fight with all its might to survive. This is the moment of vertigo in liminal space, the point where you let go of the branch of what you were, but haven't yet grasped the next one. It's the vacuum where you no longer know who you are. The old answers don't work, and the new ones haven't arrived yet. The conditioned mind goes into absolute panic. It floods you with fear, doubt, and catastrophic scenarios. It tells you that you're going crazy, that you're losing control, that you're disintegrating. And in a way, it's right. A part of you is disintegrating. Many fail at initiation precisely here. The discomfort becomes unbearable. The need for solid ground, for a familiar identity, becomes overwhelming. They quickly cling to any known role, any old belief, any relationship that gives them a sense of self, even if it is a false and limiting sense. They recoil from the threshold, and the door closes. The opportunity passes, and the soul returns to the cycle of suffering, perhaps to try again in another life. True alchemy, however, requires you to endure the discomfort of not knowing. It requires you to remain in the fire, in the void, in the darkness of Negredo, trusting that something exists on the other side. It is an act of supreme courage. It is the willingness to relinquish everything you thought you were, to become everything you truly are. It is the surrender of the part to the whole. It is the drop of water trusting that, upon falling into the ocean, it will not be destroyed, but will become the ocean itself. This process cannot be forced or rushed. It is a maturation. It's like the caterpillar in the cocoon. There is a period when it is no longer a caterpillar, but it is not yet a butterfly either. It is a primordial soup, a mass of imaginative cells reorganizing themselves into a new form. If you open the cocoon too early, the butterfly dies. You must allow the transformation to occur in its own time, in the dark, in silence, in trust. What emerges on the other side of this death is not nothingness, but everything. It is your authentic presence, free from masks and armor. It is the ability to live with an open heart, because you no longer have anything to protect. Your security no longer comes from external walls, but from your unwavering connection to your inner core. You become paradoxically more vulnerable and more invincible at the same time. Your strength is no longer in rigidity, but in fluidity. The death of the false self is not an event, but a continuous process of stripping away. Each day, you shed a new layer, a new belief, a new fear, and with each layer that falls, your light shines a little brighter. What was once a terrifying process becomes a dance of liberation. You learn to die to the past at every moment, to be reborn in the present. And it is in this state of presence that the mechanics of activation become not only possible, but inevitable. Consider the oyster. It doesn't choose to create the pearl. An irritant, a grain of sand, invades its sanctuary, disrupting the comfortable balance of its existence. It's something it can't ignore, can't fight, and can't expel. Faced with the inevitable, the oyster doesn't resist violently, nor does it surrender to disintegration. It begins a slow and deliberate process. It envelops the source of its discomfort, layer by layer, with nacre, a luminous and rare substance secreted from its own being. The pearl is not the removal of pain. It is the transformation of irritation into irreplaceable beauty. It is proof that the wound can become the source of the greatest preciousness. The pressure you feel now, the crisis that seems to threaten your integrity, is not crushing you. It is creating the exact and necessary conditions for the emergence of a consciousness that could not be born otherwise, in an environment of comfort and predictability. Your discomfort is the irritant. Your awakening will be the pearl. Many seek a spirituality that eliminates discomfort, that offers an escape from life's pressures. But this is a childish search for comfort that hinders growth. True alchemy doesn't shy away from the grain of sand. It embraces it. It uses it as the nucleus around which consciousness crystallizes. Your ability to remain present with your own irritation, with your own disarray, is what determines the quality and brilliance of the pearl being formed within you. Each layer of mother of pearl is an act of presence. It is a conscious choice to meet pain with acceptance rather than resistance. It is the decision to stop fighting reality and begin to work with it. This process is not passive. It requires immense strength, the strength of surrender, the courage to be vulnerable in the face of what cannot be controlled. The oyster doesn't know it's creating a jewel. It is simply responding to its suffering in the most intelligent and creative way possible. Your nervous system is doing the same. The intensity you feel is your deepest self secreting the substance of consciousness around your oldest wounds. It is transforming the lead of trauma into the gold of wisdom. Every time you choose presence instead of distraction, acceptance instead of denial, you add another luminous layer to your pearl. You are, at this very moment, in the midst of the process of creating your own soul. Don't underestimate the depth of what's happening. Society has taught you to get rid of irritation as quickly as possible, to take a pill, to seek a distraction. But your soul knows that irritation is sacred. It's a call to the depths. It's an invitation to stop living on the surface and dive into the dark waters of your own being, where the most precious treasures are hidden. Your pain is not a sign that something is wrong, but that something very right is trying to be born. The formation of a pearl changes the very nature of the oyster. It becomes a bearer of something beautiful and rare. Similarly, by integrating your pain, you don't revert to who you were before. You become someone who carries the wisdom of transformation within themselves. And this new quality of being begins to manifest as a subtle intelligence that guides all your choices, an intelligence based not on logic, but on pure resonance. When the perception of the monad begins to infiltrate your daily life, the first and most profound change occurs in your sensitivity. You become a finely tuned instrument. Your ability to sense resonance and dissonance becomes your primary navigation system. Relationships that once made sense, based on convenience or shared wounds, begin to palpably drain your energy. Career paths that seemed obvious and safe suddenly become restrictive, like clothes that no longer fit. This is not a problem to be solved. It is pure information. It is your energy field telling you, in real time, that your fundamental frequency has changed. What was once compatible now generates static. The dissonance you feel is not a judgment about others or about your past choices. It is a clear and impersonal sign that you have outgrown the vibrational environment you used to call home. Trying to remain in those spaces is like trying to play a pure note on an out-of-tune instrument. The reaction of the conditioned mind is to try to fix the situation. It tries to rationalize, find someone to blame, or force the old mold to fit its new form. But the intelligence of resonance doesn't operate by force. It operates by recognition and permission. You don't need to aggressively destroy your life. You just need to become radically honest about what truly resonates with your deepest nature and what contracts it. Honesty becomes your action. Your body becomes your oracle. A feeling of expansion in your chest, relaxation in your shoulders, deeper breathing, all these are signs of yes. A tightness in your stomach, tension in your jaw, a feeling of sudden tiredness. These are signs of no. You learn to trust these signs above any external logic or outside opinion. Your biology becomes your compass, guiding you moment by moment toward your path of least resistance and greatest flow. This newfound sensitivity may feel uncomfortable at first. You may feel isolated, as if you no longer fit in anywhere. This is temporary. It's a recalibration period where the universe is removing what no longer serves you to make room for what truly belongs to you. Your task is to endure the vacuum, trusting that your new frequency will inevitably attract new people, new opportunities, and new realities that are in harmony with it. Dissonance is not your enemy. It is your ally. It protects you from straying from your path. It prevents you from investing your vital energy in situations that can no longer sustain you. Every time you honor a no from your body, even if your mind doesn't understand why, you strengthen your connection to your truth. You are training yourself to live from your center, instead of reacting to external circumstances. This intelligence doesn't shout. It doesn't debate. It doesn't justify itself. It is a silent knowledge, an immediate recognition that arises even before the mind has time to form an opinion. It is the voice of your deepest core, the voice that has always been there, but that you now finally have the necessary silence to hear. Ancient wisdom, from theosophists who spoke of Buddhi to Greek philosophers who called it nous, has always pointed to a type of knowledge that operates before reason. It is not a logical conclusion that arrives at the end of a long chain of thought. It is an immediate recognition, a direct and unfiltered knowing that happens in the instant of an encounter, a decision, a perception. It is the answer that arrives even before the question is fully formulated. Your intuition is not a mystical hunch or wishful thinking. It is the monad communicating through the only channel that bypasses the conditioned mind and its endless layers of doubt, fear, and analysis. It is the intelligence of your total being speaking directly to your consciousness. It doesn't use words, but sensations, a feeling of certainty, of peace, of alignment, or the opposite, a feeling of contraction, of error, of warning. It is the oldest and most reliable language you possess. The reason you doubt that voice is because your fragmented identity, your ego, sees it as a direct threat to your authority. The ego bases its power on analysis, control, the ability to predict and manipulate outcomes. Intuition operates from a much broader field of knowledge, a field to which the ego has no access. Accepting the guidance of intuition is, for the ego, an act of surrender, an admission that it is not in control. Honoring this silent knowing is the first practical step toward reintegration. It starts with small things: choosing a different route home, deciding to call a friend for no apparent reason, refusing to engage in an argument you feel will drain you. Every time you act on this inner knowing, however small the act, you are transferring power from your ego to your soul. You are reconfiguring who is in control of your life. This voice cannot be forced. It can only be heard in silence. That is why practices of stillness are so crucial. Meditation, time in nature, moments of pause without stimuli. All of this creates the inner space for the whisper of intuition to become audible. The noise of the world and the noise of your own mind are the static that prevents the clear reception of the signal. By cultivating silence, you are not doing anything, but you are creating the conditions for everything to be revealed. With time and practice, trust in that voice becomes unwavering. You begin to realize that it guides you with a precision and wisdom that your rational mind could never achieve. It leads you to synchronistic encounters, protects you from unseen dangers, and aligns you with your highest purpose in ways that defy logic. You stop trying to figure life out. and begin to allow life to reveal itself to you, moment by moment. This shift from a life guided by the mind to a life guided by the soul is the essence of activation. And this activation is not just a state of consciousness, but a profound biological reconfiguration, a process that has its command center in the sacred geometry of your own head. Thoth left behind not only philosophies and allegories, he left precise biological instructions for activating higher consciousness. The process he describes is not an abstraction, but a mechanism involving the sacred geometry of the head. At the center of the brain, two glands, the pituitary and the pineal, await like bridegrooms at an altar. Esoteric tradition knows them as the sun and the moon, the masculine and feminine principles of consciousness within the microcosm of the human body. The alchemical union of these two glands is what initiates the cascade of enlightenment. This does not happen by chance. It requires a deliberate act of will and focus. When consciousness is intentionally brought to the exact center of the skull, the point between and slightly above these two glands, and held there, a field of coherence begins to form. Accompanied by specific sound frequencies, or the hum of inner silence, they begin to vibrate in unison. When the pituitary and pineal glands come into phase, they fire off a high-voltage electrical signal. It is a pulse of biophotonic light that travels through the central and peripheral nervous system in a fraction of a second. This signal is the key that flips the switch of the monad in the center of the heart. The heart, which contains its own brain with over 40,000 neurons, receives this signal and unlocks its electromagnetic field, expanding it into a coherent energy torus. This is not a fleeting emotional experience or a feeling of well-being. It is a physical and neurological reconfiguration. The brain is rewired. The nervous system is recalibrated to operate at a higher frequency and with greater capacity. The body, which was once a vehicle for the personality and its dramas, becomes a perfectly tuned antenna, a receiver and transmitter of cosmic intelligence. You stop thinking with your limited brain and begin to perceive with your whole being. This process explains why so many traditions emphasize focusing on the third eye. It's not about seeing auras or having psychic visions, although that can occur as a side effect. The true purpose is to create the necessary energetic pressure in the center of the head to force the alignment of the glands. It's an act of vibrational acupuncture, using one's own consciousness as the needle to activate the master points of the human energy system. Modern science is only beginning to understand the importance of these glands, especially the pineal gland, with its calcite crystals that make it piezoelectric, capable of converting vibrations into electrical signals. The ancient masters knew this millennia ago. They understood that the human body is not a bag of flesh and bone, but a biotechnological instrument of immense power, designed for transcendence. For this celestial marriage to take place, however, the energy that rises to the brain must be of the highest purity. The ceremony cannot be performed with an impure fuel, and this fuel, the sacred messenger that travels from the earth to the heaven of the body, is liquid fire. In medical occultism and internal alchemy, the secret to spiritual elevation lies in a physical substance, cerebrospinal fluid. This is not merely a liquid that dampens the brain. It is the sacred oil, the inner Christos, the liquid fire that carries the life force and information of consciousness through the nervous system. It rises from the base of the spine, the sacrum, to the throne of the brain, the thalamus and the ventricles. Thoth teaches that this sacred oil, to fulfill its activating function, cannot be corrupted. It must remain pure. Low-frequency vibrations, such as chronic fear, repressed anger, shame, and unbridled lust, alter the chemical composition and electrical charge of this fluid. They make it turbid and heavy, unable to ascend and complete the circuit. Maintaining a state of emotional and mental purity is not a moral precept, but a technical requirement. Nighttime activation, the time when the parasympathetic system dominates and the body is in its most receptive state, involves a specific physical movement, sacral compression. Through breathing and postural techniques, gentle pressure is applied to the sacral region. This act functions like a manual pump, pushing purified cerebrospinal fluid upwards through the central canal of the spinal cord towards the brain. When this pure liquid, this liquid fire, finally touches the third ventricle in the center of the brain, a hollow chamber that the ancients called the Cave of Brahma, hyperdimensional perception is awakened. It is like a key turning in a cosmic lock. The veil of material illusion, the perception of a solid and separate three-dimensional world, is momentarily broken. Consciousness experiences itself as a unified field of energy and information. This is the biological basis of the Enlightenment experience. It is not a fantasy. It is human biology serving as the ultimate alchemical crucible. The body is not an obstacle to be transcended, but the very vehicle of transcendence. Every part of the process, from the purification of emotions to the mechanics of breathing and posture, has a precise purpose: to prepare and guide the liquid fire to its destination. Many spiritual practices fail because they ignore this bodily mechanics. They remain at the level of the mind, belief, and affirmation. But the activation of the monad is a physical event. It requires the body's hardware to be properly prepared and operated. You can have the most advanced software in the world, but if the hardware isn't compatible, the program won't run. Your body is the hardware. For the sacral pump to function and the liquid fire to rise, however, one final and absolutely crucial condition must be met. The entire system must enter a state that defies all our survival instincts, a state of complete and utter inertia. For the monad to be fully activated, for the signal of the marriage of the glands to be received without interference, the body must reach a state of total inertia. It is a silence so profound, a stillness so absolute, that time itself seems to stop. While the analytical mind is generating its constant noise, seeking, trying, striving to achieve enlightenment, the subtle frequency of unity will remain inaudible, muffled by the static of the ego. The technical instruction left by the masters is counterintuitive and radical. It requires you to find the vacuum, the point of stillness between breaths. Specifically, the moment of suspension that exists after a complete exhalation, before the body demands the next inhalation. It is an act of deliberately interrupting the flow of oxygen for just a few seconds, an act that the survival mind interprets as a threat of death. It is in this pulmonary vacuum, in this sacred pause, that the magic happens. When the body is completely still, like a living statue, and breathing is suspended, all the noise of the biological system ceases. Metabolism slows down. The flow of thoughts quiets. It is in this absolute silence that the fire of Amenti, the subtle energy of the soul, finally finds space to rise unobstructed. Activation is an act of biological surrender to the silence that preceded creation. The psalm that says, "Be still and know that I am God," is not a poetic suggestion. It's a technical instruction manual. Stillness is not just mental, it's physical. Total inertia of the body is the prerequisite. In that state, you are no longer operating as a separate, breathing entity. You become one with the field, allowing the very breath of the universe to move through you when it decides to return. This is the most difficult point for most. The body's panic, the ego's fear of losing control, is immense. The practice consists of sitting on that threshold, in that discomfort, and relaxing into it. Instead of fighting the urge to breathe, you observe it with equanimity. You teach your nervous system that it is safe to be in the vacuum, that the source of life is not oxygen, but the consciousness that animates the body. The convergence of these three factors, the marriage of the glands, the rise of liquid fire, and total inertia, creates an exponential amplification. It is not a sum, it is a multiplication. Together they create the conditions for a quantum phase event in consciousness. The system reaches an inflection point and leaps to a new level of order and coherence. The perception of reality changes permanently. The result of this transformation is not the acquisition of powers to impress others. It's not about levitating or reading minds. The deeper, more visible consequence is far more subtle, and at the same time, infinitely more powerful. It is the emergence of a quality of being that alters the very reality around you. Those who undergo this inner transformation do not gain supernatural powers to display on a stage. The change is far more fundamental. They acquire an unmistakable quality of presence. Ancient traditions describe this symbolically as the halo, the aureole. Not a magical light floating above the head, but the natural radiance of an electromagnetic field that has been reorganized around its central point, now operating in a state of high coherence. This presence doesn't need to assert itself. It doesn't need validation. It simply is. And by being, it changes the atmosphere of the rooms it enters. Conversations deepen effortlessly. People feel seen and heard on a level they rarely experience. Tension and drama seem to dissolve in its proximity, not because the person does anything, but because of the frequency it passively emits. The halo is the inevitable consequence of genuine alignment. It is visible proof that the fragmented identity, with its constant need to defend itself, prove its worth, and control others, has given way to the silent majesty of the monad. The energy that was once spent on internal conflicts and social performances is now released and radiates outward as a field of peace and stability. You can sense this quality in certain people. They may not be famous or rich, they may be gardeners, teachers, or artisans, but when you are near them, you feel calmer, clearer, more yourself. They act as a tuning fork, and their presence helps your own energy resonate more harmoniously. They remind you, without saying a word, of your own essential nature. Becoming that presence is the true goal of the spiritual journey. It's not about escaping the world, but about becoming a force for healing and transformation within it. It's about embodying the peace you seek. It's about being the refuge you once searched for. Your presence becomes your service, your gift to the world, and this gift is offered not through doing, but through being. And it is exactly this being that I would like to talk to you about now, in a very personal way. Keeping this channel alive, diving into these truths that few have the courage to touch, is work we do with a care that words cannot fully express. Each page of the ebook, The MONAD Code, was written with your journey back home in mind. The plain and simple truth is that this channel does not survive without you. It depends on the help of those who value this search. By getting our material in the first pinned comment, you are not only receiving the keys to sovereignty, you are protecting this space so it can continue to exist. It is your support that allows us to keep being this voice in the silence. If this content helped you, consider helping us continue. This activation, since it occurs at a deep level, is irreversible. The activation is a one-way portal. Once you experience the reality of your core, once you touch the point of stillness, the journey back home becomes the only path that matters. This activation, once it occurs at a deep level, is irreversible. Not because you become perfect or immune to suffering, but because you can no longer fully believe the lie of your own limitation. Once you touch that point of stillness at the center of your being, once you experience yourself as the observing consciousness instead of the suffering character, the illusion is fatally wounded. You can no longer fully identify with your wound or your fragment. When life's chaos tries to regain control, when fear and doubt arise, as they surely will, you will have an unshakable point of reference. An anchor in the midst of the storm. You will have the cellular memory, the visceral recollection that the consciousness that observes pain is already its own refuge. Peace is not something to be achieved, but something to be returned to. And the way back is a single step inward. The return doesn't require complex rituals or lengthy practices. It only requires silent remembrance. A moment of pause, a conscious breath, an act of bringing your attention from the external noise to the inner silence. It is the act of remembering who is aware of all this. In this simple recognition, the power of the storm diminishes because you are no longer fighting against it. You have become the sky that contains it. The signal became audible to you tonight. The seed has been planted. The structure of your being, on subtle levels that your mind does not yet comprehend, has already begun to change. Your only task now is to allow it, to allow the frequency to settle, to water the seed with your attention and your presence, to protect the fragile sprout of new consciousness from the old weeds of habit and doubt. This journey of remembrance doesn't have to be a solitary one. By subscribing to this channel, you join a community of souls who have also heard the call, who are walking the same path back home. Each video, each practice, each sharing is a reminder, a reinforcement of the frequency, a mutual support in deconstructing the old and building the new. Allow the frequency you felt here to settle into your system. Don't try to analyze or understand it with your mind. Just feel it. Let it work on you during your sleep, during your day. And as a symbolic act of anchoring this decision in your body and in the world, go to the comments section. In silence, without fanfare, leave your mark. Write the words, "I've come home," not for others, but for yourself, as a seal on your commitment, as the first declaration of your newfound sovereignty. Welcome back.